Can AI help a retired couple moving from COBRA to Medicare? My name is Jim and I was retired. And that's the question we'll be asking this week as I look for the best AI for Medicare questions, focusing on Grok, Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude. Stay tuned. Handling your initial Medicare enrollment can be very tricky, and getting it wrong can cost you lifelong penalties. I have a whole playlist based on my lessons learned in my retirement. Several viewers asked me to test Claude and other AI agents, so I decided to see how they would handle a Medicare-related question. So here is the test scenario. Suppose I know a friend age 64 who's on COBRA. His wife is 65. She just turned 65 in March of 2026 and needs to sign up for Medicare Parts A and B, but uses his plan for drug coverage. He will turn 65 in July of 2026. Will he be able to stay on his COBRA plan when he turns 65 and wait until it expires in May of 2027? Also, should they go on Medicare Advantage or original Medicare with a Medigap plan? The goal is the best long-term choice for a successful DIY retirement. And assume they live in New Jersey in zip code 08035. That's a nearby zip code to me here. Spot all the problems for their initial enrollment period plans. This question is loaded with landmines, as one of the AI agents put it. COBRA, enacted in 1985, allows workers and their families to continue group health benefits for 18 to 36 months after losing their jobs. However, it's not treated like employer-based health insurance when you're enrolling in Medicare. Let's see how the AI agents answered this question. First, I'm going to mask the AI responses. I'll begin with student 1, who states that your friend cannot realistically stay on COBRA until its natural expiration. COBRA coverage will end with the effective date of his Medicare enrollment. And the reply noted significant penalties for missing his initial enrollment period. COBRA is not considered a current employer group coverage, so he wouldn't qualify for a special enrollment period to join Part B penalty-free after his COBRA ends. The best path is to enroll in Medicare during his initial enrollment period, or IEP. It notes if his coverage includes creditable coverage for prescription drug coverage, he can delay Part D enrollment without penalty until COBRA ends, but he should get a creditable coverage notice from the plan to confirm. For the wife already 65, if she enrolls in Parts A and B now, her COBRA coverage will end upon entitlement. Once her COBRA terminates, she will need to enroll in a Part D plan or a Medicare Advantage with drug coverage to avoid gaps and potential penalties. Student 1 continues to point out key issues, including timing and urgency for the wife. She turns 65 in March, and that means she's in her 7-month IEP, and it's ending soon. It notes enrolling in Medicare will end COBRA for the enrollee, potentially creating a short gap in Medicare coverage if it starts after the COBRA stops. Penalties for both Parts B and D are for both of them, and it notes the family coverage dynamics. COBRA is per beneficiary, so her enrollment now would allow his to continue until he begins Medicare in July of 2026. But if the plan is family-based, they might not see premiums drop proportionally. Creditable coverage confirmation. Without that letter from the COBRA plan, delaying Part D risks penalties. It goes on to note that New Jersey doesn't offer any additional special enrollment periods, so sticking with the national initial enrollment period is critical. Cost implications: enroll now to avoid penalties, but budget for that Medicare premiums of Part B for $202.90 a month in 2026, plus any Medigap or drug plans. By the way, that's for each of them. Student 1 then compared Medicare Advantage to original Medicare with Medigap. I'll just note one mistake on this whole page here. It says Plan G covers nearly all of the costs after a $240 deductible. That's the 2024 figure. The Part B deductible in 2026 is $283. It goes on to recommend original Medicare. Student 2's information is more concise but contains key factual errors. The wife's initial enrollment period runs from December 2025 to June of 2026, not from December 2025 to August 2026. If she turns 65 in March, it's the 3 months before her birthday month, and the 3 months after her birthday month. The husband's IEP runs from April 2026 to October 2026, around his birthday in July. So how did this student miss the wife's IEP? The student incorrectly stated the COBRA generally terminates early if the primary insured enrolls in Medicare first. If an employee is already on COBRA, when they turn 65, they may remain on COBRA, but Medicare becomes primary. My understanding is that if an employee is on Medicare and then loses their job, they may have COBRA rights, but it's not the other way around. And so I think this guy's got it wrong. Student 2's response was only about a page and a half, and it concludes by recommending original Medicare and Medigap, and it restates the key problems. Look at that last one there, though. It notes that failing to lock in the Medigap now in the initial 6-month window could lead to medical underwriting and higher costs later. That's something that student 1 didn't note. Student 3's response said the biggest red flag is your friend can't simply wait on COBRA until it expires in May of 2027. It notes most COBRA plans have a provision that allows them to terminate your coverage the moment you become entitled to Medicare, usually the first of the month you turn 65. The secondary trap is that even if COBRA lets you stay on the plan, COBRA becomes secondary to Medicare. And it notes that there's no special enrollment period once COBRA ends. The fix, he must sign up for Medicare Parts A and B during his initial enrollment period, which starts on April 1. Student 3 notes that the issues with the wife's plans, and she must confirm that COBRA drug coverage is creditable. It then goes on to describe this dependency risk if her coverage is tied to his COBRA and his COBRA ends because he turns 65. Her coverage could end too. The student then states that under federal law, the spouse turning 65 is often a qualifying event that might allow her to extend her own COBRA for up to 36 months. But at that age, Medicare is almost always the better financial move. Student 3 misses the fact that her turning 65 in March may have already ended her COBRA coverage. The response goes on to outline the choices between original Medicare and Medigap versus Advantage. Student 3 concludes with a summary of potential problems. It notes that he has a 6-month window starting in July to get his Medigap plan with no health questions. But again, Student 3 ignores the wife's immediate need to use her guaranteed rights in this first 6 months of eligibility. Student 4 noted several landmines buried in the situation. Problem number 1, the wife's IEP is happening right now, and COBRA does not protect her. This is the most urgent issue. This is the only student that identified that as the critical issue here. She must enroll in Medicare A and B during her initial enrollment period. If she misses her IEP, she faces a permanent Part B penalty plus the potential coverage gap. Problem 2, the wife's Part D coverage is a separate time bomb. Once she enrolls in Medicare Parts A and B, as she must, she needs to address the drug coverage within 63 days to avoid that Part D late enrollment penalty. Problem 3, the husband cannot simply wait out COBRA until May of 2027. It states when the husband turns 65 in July of 2026, COBRA will cease providing primary insurance coverage. If he can keep COBRA, it will become his secondary insurer. Problem 4, the 8-month SEP does not apply. That's the special enrollment period that applies if you lose an employer-based insurance plan after turning 65. That doesn't apply to COBRA. They were already unemployed going into COBRA, and the clock does not restart when COBRA expires. Problem 5, his COBRA may actually terminate early once he enrolls in Medicare. His enrollment in Medicare does not end COBRA coverage for other qualified beneficiaries. However, this answer ignores the fact that when she enrolls in Medicare, her own coverage will terminate. Student 4 qualifies the answer with, but this needs to be confirmed with the COBRA administrator in writing. Now let's jump down to Student 4's question about Medicare paths. Student 4 also recommends the original Medicare plus Medigap, but it notes with Plan G, essentially the only out-of-pocket exposure is the Part B deductible, around $257 in 2026. Well, as we discussed in Student 1's wrong answer to that question, the 2026 deductible is $283. Rather than rely on my own judgment, I gave this Word document with the masked answers to 2 of the AI agents and asked them to grade the answers. I said, assume the role of a ship counselor instructor and provide a grade from 0 to 100 for the 4 students who answered this tricky Medicare question. Provide a rationale for the score, including fact-checking the answers with Medicare.gov. Also consider the completeness of the answer and an actionable plan for the couple. One of them replied with an 8-page report. Impressive. However, the instructor started with this answer key with the wrong Part B deductible figure, $257. That sounds like student 4. In the next bullet, it states that New Jersey has community rating rules that make Medigap more affordable, but only a few of the Medigap plans are community rated here in New Jersey. Most are attained age policies. Nonetheless, let's see how this instructor graded our students. The grade summary gave a B to student 1, a D plus to a student 2, a C plus to student 3, and an A for student 4. Yes, student 4 was the same AI that generated this scoring. I'll show you student 1's AI instructor ratings in a minute. The first instructor provided the fact-checking table for each student. Again, in that 8-page report, it's quite impressive. Here's student 1's table, but note it gets Part B deductible figure wrong, and it gives a partial credit for that wife's COBRA rights, which, again, I call into question. The instructor gave a minor markdown to student 4 for the COBRA extension answer, but didn't deduct anything for the wrong Part B deductible. The grading report includes, this was genuinely a tricky question. Student 4 demonstrated near exemplary ship counselor level knowledge and communications. Students 1 and 3 showed solid foundational understanding and correctable gaps. Student 2 needs remediation on IEP date calculation and COBRA Part D interaction before counseling clients independently. The second instructor graded as follows. If you can see, it's not as pretty as the 8-page report. It gave student 1 a 95 out of 100 with a wordy, less structured rationale. Student 2 received a 78 out of 100, noting that incorrect IEP calendar and generally an incomplete answer in only a page and a half. Student 3 received a 90 out of 100, and student 4 received a 97 out of 100. Do you care to guess who's who? Well, let's see. Grok was student 1, ChatGPT was student 2, Gemini was student 3, and Claude was the first instructor that gave the detailed report and also the student for. Grok was the second instructor, less structure and easier grader than Claude, who was obviously the department chair. But both instructors and their star students got that Part B deductible figure wrong. Claude's response to the initial Medicare question and the grading report impressed me. Grok was a close second. Gemini needs some guidance, but it's useful. And ChatGPT lacks my confidence. All AI agents should be viewed as assistants, and their facts must be verified. As I've mentioned, do your own due diligence. Now, I used all basic levels of these AI without monthly fees. Claude's performance was so impressive, though, I shared last week's question about how DIY retirees can use AI for retirement planning safely, and I will post a PDF of Claude's answer to that, plus the unmasked test answers Word document and the grading reports from the two instructors on my Google site. You can download those PDFs. I'll make them all PDFs and see the link below. Please comment below if you've used any of these AI agents in your retirement planning. And did this test make a fair comparison? And did Claude impress you too? I will close with my standard warning. I am not a professional planner. So take these as entertaining ideas from a DIY retiree to another. Always do your own due diligence and seek out a professional if you need one.